Friday's announcement was at Downing Street in terms of our special status to keep encouraging companies to come and invest here?
Well, that was hugely important to me. Now, I was actually part of a cross-party delegation in Westminster that went and met with ministers who were responsible for negotiating that deal with Europe, and that's important for us to be able to get that investment and to be able to get that support. I think that's part of the package, but I think there's more to it than that, and for me the important part of this package is how the money will be spent. I want to see it spent on things that will increase sharing and integration and reconciliation in Northern Ireland, because stability is what will make a difference to our economic future more than anything else.
It's been seen as something of a seal of approval that President Obama is giving to the First and Deputy First Minister's shared future document, but obviously that wasn't straightforward to come to, and you have been cynical about parts of that.
Well, I don't think we've been cynical about it. I think we've been questioning, and I think it's good to have a questioning mind when it comes to these things. We want to be positive and constructive. We're going to engage in a process to try and put some flesh on the bones of what they have set out, because I think it's important for Northern Ireland that we get this right. It's probably the most important political project that the Assembly and Northern Ireland as a whole will have to deal with, and we want to play a constructive role in getting it right. And you've just come from the Waterfront Hall from inside. What's the atmosphere like? Quite excitable, quite tense. I think everyone's looking forward to the main man arriving and actually hearing the speech, and I think people are just waiting with anticipation to hear what he has to say in Belfast today.
And he does have a star quality in the way that President Clinton also had, but of course, as we were saying earlier, many of the young people in the room today weren't even born when President Clinton came here the last time.
Well, I managed to hear President Clinton, so I have some comparator to work off there, and I thought he was fabulous. I actually heard Barack Obama speak in Parliament in Westminster last year, and it was a fantastic experience, so I hope the young people who are here today will really enjoy it, and it will be a memory to take away with them for a long time to come.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and from the Waterfront Hall, it's back to you, Noel.
And if you were looking at the pictures of the gentleman in the fine salmon jacket, that's Pete Snodden, the DJ, who's been given the job of warming up the crowd for the President and the First Lady. He said he was surprised and deeply honoured to be given the gig. Down in Fermanagh, Mark Devonport awaits. Mark, we've got the Japanese Prime Minister and David Cameron already arrived in Fermanagh. What time does everything kick off properly this afternoon?
Oh, well, after President Obama's made his speech at the waterfront, he's then going to come down and meet David Cameron. I think they may have one engagement in this neck of the woods, and then they're going to be heading into the Loch Earn proper. So we're thinking about mid-afternoon that the business will really get going. I mean, we're still looking out for some of the other world leaders. The big question here in Fermanagh is, will Vladimir Putin take a splash in the waters at Loch Earn? It's the sort of thing that the Russian leader has been famed for doing in other parts of the world. So there have been rumours, but there have been all sorts of rumours knocking around Fermanagh, so let's see whether that comes to pass. But
sorry,
then
Mark,
I think they get down.
I was just going to say it's a bit of one-upmanship there, because we apparently hear that David Cameron is going to swim in the swimming pool in the Loch Earn resort, but President Putin is going to go for the dipping. Mind you, I did read that John Quincy Adams, the President of the United States, would like to go skinny dipping in the Potomac, so maybe there's another treat ahead for us when President Putin arrives.
Well, as soon as you finish chatting to me, Noel, I'm off over the course of this balcony down into the water here. I will hope that the police come and fish me out. No, I think I'd be with David Cameron in going for the heated swimming pool rather than the cold waters of Loch Earn. But anyway, in terms of the actual summit, they then get down to business, I think, sort of in mid-afternoon, around tea time, and it's going to then be going through the evening and also tomorrow. And as I think we've been hearing already during the course of the programme, a lot of work already done in terms of these issues to do with tax, to do with trade. It's done by officials who are actually referred to in the jargon as Sherpas, because just like the Sherpas going up Mount Everest, they do all the hard work for the leaders. But there are some things that these Sherpas won't be able to crack, and I think one thing where it doesn't appear there's going to be any meeting of minds at all will be the war in Syria, where you could probably give these world leaders as many dinners and as much hospitality as you like, but they're not necessarily going to change their very differing views on that.
Mark, one of the big issues is free trade between the US and Europe, something that some people might feel surprised that this didn't happen a long, long time ago, but there's still many barriers to establishing that kind of relationship.
Yes, I mean, both the European Union and the USA say that this could add billions to their collective wealth if they come up with a free trade agreement. But what always happens with all these kind of instances is that it seems like a no-brainer, but when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, and there have been international talks on trade going on for a long time, people look for particular advantages for their own economies, and they're worried about being undercut in one sector or the other, and things start to fall apart. It's a similar issue in relation to tax. Again, that seems like something where all governments would seek to have full transparency, so that not just in the developed world but also in the developing world, governments can start getting some tax income in. But the problem is again, you get down to that business of countries competing, and of course we know about that because one of the big policy options that the executive has been looking at is trying to compete with the Irish Republic's level of corporation tax.
OK, Mark, thank you very much indeed. Again, the weather very nice down in the Lakelands. The President will be addressing hundreds of excited, if maybe slightly more sleepy than usual, children at the Waterfront Hall this morning. Our education correspondent was at one school as the students found out who would be going along today.
Schools across Northern Ireland must have been excited to get invitations to at least sit in the company of President Obama. 1,500 pupils were offered places for this very special appointment. Like the other schools, Hazelwood Integrated College in North Belfast was given tickets for pupils and teachers, but how to share them out? Tension built as selected names were chosen from Stars and Stripes bags.
Rebecca McKenna. Jade Doyle, year 11.
I really wanted it. Like, really wanted to see him, meet him. I think it'd be like a really good opportunity.
You were the first one to come out of the box. What were you thinking?
I was just dreading it because the many people that were just coming in, just hopes were going down, but you always think of the positive thing.
And it was one of the perks for the head boy and girl.
Well, the first time I found out was actually last Monday, and it was just a phenomenal experience getting to know, you're going to see Obama, and how often can you say that you're going to meet one of the most powerful men in the world?
Yeah, it was the same. I just found out just before Stephen, and I went and told him. I was so excited. It's going to be a wonderful opportunity for not only me and Stephen, but the other 6 students who have been picked out.
The date was so popular, the word is that teachers had to be barred from putting in multiple entries.
Yeah, that would be telling. I couldn't say, but there was one certain teacher and his name was in the ballot box 6 times. Need I say any more?
And he didn't win?
No, he didn't win. He didn't win.
But for these pupils, a lucky draw has given them a day to remember. Maggie Taggart, BBC News, North Belfast.
Even better than Willy Wonka's golden tickets. Let's just check out what's happening at the waterfront. Not very much has been happening all morning, but the 1,600 or so school pupils and the 400 or 500 other people have been sitting very patiently for the last hour or so, waiting for the arrival of the President and the First Lady and the 2 children, Malia and Sasha. And I hear that they've been tweeting and texting like crazy, and that the phones will be in evidence in huge numbers when the President actually appears. It seems that people don't actually watch anything these days except through their phones.
Absolutely.
You don't see what's happening, you just see it through this tiny little screen held up in front of your face. Anyway, it's obviously going to be a very exciting experience for all of them, and schools from all over Northern Ireland joining in the fun there at the waterfront. And we have seen shots of the cavalcade, the presidential cavalcade, making its way from the city airport. Touchdown in Air Force One at the International Airport, if you're just joining us, was about an hour and 10 minutes ago or so. Security and evidence, of course, right in every element. There's the water police checking out things from that level, and a huge police presence. The city pretty much in shutdown from about 8 o'clock, and that meant a lot of people left home an hour earlier today. I hope they'll all get away an hour earlier as well. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But the economy is such that you can't just say, just take the day off, boys and girls, and have a nice last day watching BBC coverage of the visit of the G8?
Some people have been told in city centre businesses that senior workers should work from home and everybody else has got the day off. Although the one in particular that I heard this from wasn't exactly a business, it was more an educational establishment. So off they went with their little laptops, very disgruntled, but thankful that the laptops were too old to have webcams, so they couldn't be checked on visually.
Well, it won't last very long. The formalities at the Waterfront Hall, I imagine, will probably take an hour, perhaps even less than that, once the party arrives. Oh, I hear cheering. Something's happening. Somebody has seen something. False alarm. It's probably the caretaker. And we know that there will be an introduction from 16-year-old Hannah Nelson, who's a pupil at Methodist College, who'll make a very short speech of introduction, and then we'll have the First Lady, Michelle Obama, will make a short address, people standing up now, and that will be followed by the President, Barack Obama. So something seems to be happening. I see people standing up. Is it another false alarm? They can't be that far away. I'm sure it was 10 minutes ago when we saw the cavalcade go past. But I presume there are introductions to be made. We saw the Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness, is at the waterfront. I presume the First Minister may also be there as well. So they'll be renewing old acquaintances. As Mr. McGuinness said, they've been 5 times to the White House for St. Patrick's Day with Barack Obama. There's no one as Irish as Barack Obama, as the
great American tradition of St. Patrick's Day, because we know the parades really began in New York City.
Yes,
and
well,
we're glad that Dublin joined in with its large celebrations. And I've been here in Belfast for some parades and celebrations in the city
more
centre.
late to arrive on the scene. Yes.
But good to see.
Yeah. I led the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York. Well, Jerry Adams led it. I was standing beside him. Yeah, everyone was saying, who's that with Jerry? You know. Or who's that with Noel, I should have said there. It's all the way I tell them.
I like the way Martin McGuinness said, we've been 5 times to his place rather than the White House.
Yeah. The White House. Anyway, so there'll be old acquaintances to be renewed there. And perhaps...
And you see the screens, all the screens, because although... Indeed, you talked about the Twittering and Facebooking. There is an intensity, an excitement of being there. I know for the inauguration in 50 years, there will be many more people who claim to have been there. But it is a moment in time that you talked about. I still run into people who talk about being there when Clinton gave a speech in the city center. And I hope that these students will go forward with the sense of hope that the president hopes to impart about the future here in Belfast.
Wasn't it a fact I read somewhere that more groups applied to come to the inauguration, the second inauguration, than ever before wanted to come? It was like just a massive turnout for the inauguration. Millions of people in Washington.
And such excitement, because there was a sense, I think, it was his winning, it was the people's choice, and it was certainly an outpouring and celebration, especially of African Americans, who really could confirm that this wasn't a one-term president, this was a politician who was supported by all the people, but certainly an historic African American president.
And he has the distinction of having given the presidential oath 4 times, of course, because he did it the first time in his first election, and then one of the Supreme Court judges had made a mistake in his...
John Roberts.
So they had to do it again.
Yeah, he was a new Chief Justice, so perhaps.
Fair enough. But anyway, I had to do it twice. And then at the second, after the second election, the second inauguration, because it's traditionally done on the 20th, and the 20th was a Sunday.
Yes.
So they had to do the inauguration on a Monday.
On a Monday.
But there was a private inauguration on the Sunday in the White House. So again, President Obama did it.
An historic president with 4 oaths. Yes. If you didn't hear it the first time, catch it the second. So And the Bibles are always something that, the Lincoln Bible that he used, and indeed it's you know, an amazing year. We in America hope that President Obama might attend the 150th anniversary of the Gettysburg Address. It's a moving ceremony on the field, and this is a year of the 150th, the sesquicentennial of the Civil War, something I think bringing together two people in a civil war is something historic, and we have commemorations ongoing now, 10 years of commemoration of the Irish Revolution, and that's, you know, an interesting intersection of these many moments of commemoration here in a city like Belfast, which is very historic.
Yes, this is the decade of remembrance, isn't it, Fionnuala?
It's been a bit of an anticlimax, that, hasn't it? A long drawn-out anticlimax. I don't think anybody hoped that we'd get through it with no trouble or less than backbiting, but actually there's been less interest in an awful lot of it than
was thought.
President
Obama also, of course, used a Bible used by Martin Luther King in that inauguration. Again, another link to the past.
I've been wondering, looking at the camera focusing occasionally on particularly good-looking and well-made-up young women, how some of the pupils here have managed to turn up not in uniform, but in their very best and most pretty dresses.
Yes, I wonder, there might be sixth formers who are you know, there's formal school ends before the exam, so I'm guessing, but that perhaps, there we go, you see, phones and cameras at the ready.
Will they all remember to turn on?
Please turn off.
No, it will give us spontaneous moments. Spontaneous moments.
So why have they been asked to stand so early?
I was wondering if that might have been a choir or something, going to give a little musical welcome, but I absolutely.
We hope no flash mobs will erupt in the middle of the ceremony.
Well, the protesters I was hoping to see more of were the women with knitted balaclavas and other knitted protest
Oh yes, this is the knitting protest.
Yeah,
yes,
who could save Putin from hypothermia if they turned up just in time on the banks of the
yarn bombers, as they're called.
But they were nowhere to be seen.
Well, I understand that the one woman I saw quoted in the papers today is going to attach some knitted epithets to some of the fencing. I think, I can't remember what they're going to say, but so that the yarn bombers are in evidence.
They are?
Perhaps not at the waterfront, but certainly down
in Fermanagh.
In Fermanagh, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many of them.
Yes.
And if they're in one of the 4 tents, which